Welcome back, horror fans. Frightener22 here, back with day 21 of my 31 Frightening Days of Halloween Marathon. Tonight actually kicks off the final 10 reviews for the month, so I figured that I would kick off, the final 10 days with a real bang and a real personal favorite of mine. So that's right, guys, we're going to take a look at 1996's Scream. Now, this film was directed by Wes Craven, who many of you would recall his name, gaining a lot of popularity based on his previous work, such as Last House on the Left, The Hills Have Eyes, of course giving birth to Freddy Krueger and A Nightmare on Elm Street, as well as other films such as Shocker and The Serpent and the Rainbow. Now, before I conduct this review, just for everyone to just kind of walk into this review with a fresh mind and a fresh perspective, just think back to the mid-90s, 1996, and what was going on in the horror community at that time. If you guys can think about it, there really wasn't much going on that was really profound in the industry. I mean, the 80s had, come and gone by that time, and, throughout the years there'd be, I guess, certain sprouts of, like, a decent horror movie here and there, but, I think Wes Craven had put it really well in an interview that he had conducted, and he had mentioned and touched upon the ongoing cycle that is the horror genre. It's just always, it's in style one second and then it's not. It just really goes through waves. And that's absolutely true. Craven really hit the nail on the head when he said that, because the 80s, there was just such an overindulgence of all things 80s. I mean, of all things horror movies in the 80s. I mean, you had slasher films up the ass. You had, every weekend you could go see tons of slasher movies. There were sequels being made to such popular franchises as Elm Street, Friday the 13th, etc., etc. There was stuff on the video shelves being pumped out every week in this genre. And then once the 90s came, it just really died off quietly. So by the time the mid-90s came around, it was still pretty much dead in the water. Horror was just not really popular at that time. So then came along in 1996, Scream, and holy shit, did this film turn the horror community on its head back when this came out. And personally, after so many years later, I still think this film holds up incredibly. I mean, it really is probably one of the best horror films that have come out, in the last 30 years, hands down. I truly, sincerely believe that. Now, the story in this film goes like this. It deals with a small California town by the name of Woodsboro, and in the town there lies a teenager named Sidney Prescott, who is played by Neve Campbell, and who you learn throughout the process of the film, her mother was actually brutally raped and murdered a year prior. So the man that she, pointed out and was, testified against is now in jail, but murders begin to start happening again around Woodsboro in the wake of the one-year anniversary of Sidney's mother's death. So as as the murders continue, it appears that Sidney and her friends are becoming the main targets, and it appears that the killer has a huge fascination and obsession with scary movies, which really makes an interesting and probably one of the most unique spins in, the horror genre at this time. I mean, this film is just so special because it really took all those cliches that, we've come to love, for better or worse, in the horror genre, and really just flipped them upside down. I mean, they really took all those stereotypical situations that we've all come very, we've come to understand and, remember in every notable horror movie, and it really just turned itself on its feet. I mean, this was just unbelievable, I feel, for its time. I mean, especially coming from Craven. I mean, Craven being responsible for something as classic as Elm Street and, Last House on the Left, Hills Have Eyes. I mean, it's just like, when you're working with such, a body of work and just seeing how much he gave to the horror community, it's amazing when you think back and being like, holy shit, like, he did it again. Like, he did it in the 80s, and then he came back and did something so revolutionary and unique, like, 10 years later. It's just, it baffles me. It's remarkable how Craven just, ingeniously did that. So, the cast in this is really, really stellar. As I had mentioned, Neve Campbell plays the heroine, Sidney Prescott. In addition, you have great casting by Rose McGowan, Matthew Lillard, Jamie Kennedy, Courtney Cox, David Arquette. just really, really solid casting, and I think that's where this film in particular really stands out, in comparison to any other horror movie. I mean, it was just really the power of this, this young cast that Craven put together. They're just really, really stellar. I think everybody in this is solid, straight through. I think they play their parts really, really fabulously. I mean, you really get the vibe that these aren't your stereotypical teenagers. I mean, you really feel like you went to high school with these kids, and that's great. I mean, it makes it so much more creepier when you see them murdered, and just everything. Their whole personalities, the way that they vibe with each other, it's really, really stellar. And I think that's so important to how the film worked. I mean, Craven did his magic with orchestrating the story, and of course, the wonderful script that Kevin Williamson gave, but it's really the chemistry and the vibe and the spirit of this, really stellar cast that was put together. Everybody is just really spot on in each of their respective roles. Now, I think one thing that I have to make a note on is the opening to this film. This epic opening, which lasts roughly 12 minutes, starts off with Drew Barrymore, and from the first reel, you probably figure, well, it's Drew Barrymore. I mean, that's a big star. She's got to be the heroine. But it turns out that the whole cat and mouse of the killer calling Drew Barrymore's character on the phone and stalking her and trying to play a sick game of her guessing the serial killers from classic horror films. It's really creepy. I mean, I think as far as horror movie openings go, it's really amazing. I mean, still to this day, when I pop this movie in, I'm just so engaged in that opening scene. I mean, it just gets from bad to worse. I mean, it just really, really heightens. I mean, the drama, the suspense, everything is just really spot on in it. I mean, the opening scene, if that doesn't draw you in to this film, then I truly don't know what the hell is wrong with you, because that opening scene I just think is so stellar, incredibly creepy, and just terrifying. I mean, it just turns you on your feet when you see Drew Barrymore's character gutted and hung by the tree. I mean, if that doesn't set the tone for, a really phenomenal horror movie, then I don't know what a great horror movie possibly could be then, because, Craven just really, busted out, all the talent that he had, into that opening scene, and, it really carried through over the rest of the film. Now, again, bouncing back to the cast, everybody was really, really great in this. I mean, Jamie Kennedy is just, he was my favorite character in the Scream franchise. I just thought that he had, a really funny nature about him, just, really cool personality. Really, I mean, it was just a character that I personally vibe with, because I saw a lot of myself in that character growing up and still to this day, so I really enjoyed him. And, of course, the casting of, our two killers, Skeet Ulrich and Matthew Lillard. I think Skeet Ulrich is really phenomenal in this. I mean, he bears a striking resemblance to Johnny Depp, and, that's an interesting comparison, especially with, Craven casting Johnny Depp in the original Elm Street and whatnot. But I just think that Skeet Ulrich is really, really powerful and really engaging in this film. I mean, he can play a real straight boyfriend, loving boyfriend, but when it's revealed that he is one of the killers, he is just sick to the bone crazy. I mean, it is really wild. I mean, just, the fire that you see in his eyes in those scenes. Just really stunning. I mean, just everything about this film. I mean, I really have no real complaints about this film. It's just really wonderful, just what it did for the horror community at the time. It really brought, for better or worse, horror back into the mainstream to people. I mean, after Scream, you got a lot of shitty teeny bopper horror films like I Know What You Did Last Summer and Valentine and, just things like that. But Scream, I think, still wholeheartedly stands the test of time, and I think that it should be remembered and put on a great pedestal for, the stunning achievements that it gave in 1996 and still carrying over to this day. For additional viewing, check out Scream 2 and Scream 3. I don't care what people say. I think the whole trilogy is really solid, and I am in the majority that am, just incredibly excited that Scream 4 is finally in production, and it hopefully will get rolling soon. So definitely this Halloween season, bust out Scream. I know you guys won't be disappointed. As always, thanks again for tuning in to my 31 Frightening Days of Halloween Marathon, and rest assured, tune in tomorrow for yet another review. This is Frightener 22.